Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the World Wide Web at www.ntnm.org. You can find everything on YouTube. You can also Facebook me, LinkedIn me, whatever you like. Take a crowbar and whatever. In any event, community policing, we're all big on that. Always try to be. Right now in the 24th district, the meetings always occur on Thursdays and by sector. West Rogers Park is the 10 sector. All the meetings are on the second Thursday. 2411, which is Pratt to Howard, Kedzie Ridge, meets at 5 o'clock. 2412, which is the meeting I chair, which is Pratt to Devon, Kedzie Ridge, meets at 6 o'clock. And at 7 o'clock, you can go to all three, one after another, get the trifecta. Sonny Hirsch chairs those meetings. Peterson to Devon, Kedzie Ridge. So all meetings second Thursday. The 30 sector, which is in Rogers Park. I should be careful with Rogers Park and Edgewater because I don't know the exact lines. They meet on the third Thursdays, and the 20 sector meets on the fourth Thursdays. But all community policing meetings in the 24th district are now Thursdays. If you want to find out where the community policing meeting near you is, check with 311 if you're not in the 24th district. Otherwise, go to Sonny's website at caps24.org. And speaking of community policing, and speaking of the fact that I didn't press the stopwatch yet, but I'm going to figure we've gone, about 2 minutes at this point?
Sounds good.
It is my pleasure to introduce you to the Deputy Chief of Area 3 of the Chicago Police Department, a veteran, former commander of the 24th District. I first met him as the Community Policing Sergeant of the 24th District, who was instrumental in the initial founding of the CAPS program in Chicago, and that is Deputy Chief Bruce Rottner. How are you?
Avi, I'm fine. How are you?
Good, thank you. And so we're entering a new era, a new super.
Yes, we are.
So I was about to say commissioner, but it's superintendent.
Superintendent. Yeah, New York it's commissioner, where he's from, but here it's
see, I read too many Batman comics. Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah. Gary McCarthy is our new superintendent, and he started about 2 weeks ago, and he's really hit the ground running.
Which is good. I mean, he's how is he being accepted so far?
Well, Superintendent McCarthy was a police officer in New York City. He ascended through the ranks. He became a deputy commissioner, which is similar to our deputy superintendents here. He was one of the architects of their CompStat strategy, which I can talk about a little bit later.
Sure.
And so he's a very bright, energetic guy. I had the opportunity to sit down and talk to him one-on-one about a week ago for about an hour. When he left New York, he went to Newark. He was their chief of police in Newark. And then, of course, the mayor selected Superintendent McCarthy from the three finalists that were given to him. So I know I'm excited about the superintendent. And I think the officers are excited because, he has worked to beat Carr. He has been a sergeant. He has commanded, in New York they call them precincts. So he has commanded a precinct. So in essence, he's walked in our shoes. And I think that gives him a big advantage over somebody who may not necessarily have the same law enforcement background that we do.
No, I definitely think that's the case, and I'm sure anybody can read between the lines. A little bit anyway.
No comment.
I'm not doing that to you. I shouldn't do that to you at all. Any foot in mouth is me, not him. Nobody knows how to do the PR thing better than, or actually how to be a nice guy and talk nicely about people than Deputy Chief Rottner, and I think that's a great trait. It really is. In terms of, it's too early to know what the changes are. By the way, if you're watching Superintendent, we would love to have you on the show, and we more than invite you to come on. And we're a very police-friendly environment, and so you're talking about things like CompStat. There's other plans too. Before we get into CompStat, because I know I'm going to forget this, Dane Ronvik, who's one of the real core people of community policing in our area, passed on to everybody, a system that apparently exists. You can correct me, little Sonny.
I don't think it exists.
It's a proposed system?
Right, yeah. Dane actually forwarded that to me.
Oh, you know, okay, good.
Yes, he did, and I forwarded that on to our IT people.
Right, to explain to people what we're talking about is if the situation, well, you know better than me.
Well, no, go ahead, Avi. Why don't you?
Well, basically, that if let's say people are in a given area, in a small, let's say on a given block or maybe a couple of block area, and they have that common concern about a problem within that small area. Everybody, if there's an alert, sort of everybody's cell phone goes off and tells them something's happening right then and there.
Right.
And it alerts them to what's happening at the time so people can be more prepared to look out their window, deal with the situation. You know, it sounds like a really good idea in theory, but it's never been put into practice. We don't know.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if it's actually in practice in any other cities. But Dane did forward that to me. I sent that on to John Lewin, John is actually a police commander, but he's over at OAMC as a managing director. He's a brilliant technological guy, John. And when Dane sent that to me, I sent it right to John, and John said he would look into it. And of course, as you know, these things take a little time and a little research, and, you know, is the money available? Can it be done? It didn't seem like an expensive thing at all to do. So it's in the right hands, and I'd like to see it, you know, piloted perhaps up here. Dane's on 2424, and, you know, that would be a good area to pilot something like that.
I want to tell you, in my beat also, because I sent that out to everybody 2 days before our community policing meeting, and 75% of the people brought it up and really liked the idea very much and wanted to be involved in it.
Sure, and everybody has cell phones today. I mean, the technology is here. It's available.
Except me.
Well, Avi, you know, we do have to have some, you know, throwbacks to the old days. You know? But, you know, I'm surprised you didn't have the brick phone now, Avi, you know.
Who says I don't?
But anyways, yeah, but, you know, with everybody being so technologically, you know, savvy to different degrees today, I mean, this is something that was very simple and something that appears to be very useful.
No, I think that could be very beneficial. You know, I like the idea, too, that anything that can bring neighbors together in this sort of thing. And because part of the, you know, people have forgotten some of the initial ideas of community policing. I mean, when you first started out, which is actually, you were involved before I was and Sonny was involved before I was. Although, I guess I was actually part of it when it officially happened, although it happened here as a test program
it was a pilot
a couple of years earlier. The fact is that there was not necessarily a good relationship between much of the police and much of the public because people didn't know each other.
Right. I don't want to say that, you know, especially up here where I've spent a large part of my career, that it wasn't a good relationship. There really wasn't a relationship in that context. Because when we think of a bad relationship, we think about, you know, the police versus the community, like we've seen in some other cities where they've had problems, you know, based on race, on economics, on a number of different factors. I don't believe we really had that problem up here, you know, in the north side. I just don't think there was any relation. People generally, you know, weren't afraid to call the police, but they really didn't think about the police or think about their own safety. I think I've said before on your show, and I'll say it again, that Chuck Ramsey, who was really the architect of CAPS here back in the early 90s, 91, 92, when we rolled CAPS out here in the 24th District, which, as we mentioned, was one of the 5 prototype districts, I recall going to a meeting at Warren Park, and there were 300 people sitting there, and Deputy Chief Ramsey at the time asked how many people who live here know the names of the police officers who patrol around your homes. And I went as a citizen because I lived in 24 at the time, and I worked in the 24th District, and I couldn't raise my hand. And he said, well, don't you think it would make sense if you did? And that was a very simple but very eloquent statement, which kind of summed up community policing in just a few words. You know, of course you should know the police officers who are protecting your families, your homes, your property, and things like that. And that was really the ground zero where community policing sprang up from. Now, since that time, when we started in 1993, community policing has grown. A lot of and I don't want to use the word diluted, a lot of it was based on having resources, especially city resources, coming in. Those first years, we got everything because we were one of 5 prototypes. Once it spread out, it really, there weren't as many resources to help our police officers, to help the residents do things they needed to do, which were anti-crime strategies, and it could have been as simple as trimming trees on a dark street. We got a lot of cooperation that first, second, third year, but then as, again, the economics started to take place, we just didn't have the manpower to do that. And when I say manpower, I'm talking from a city perspective. So, community policing over the years has developed to a lot of different things. And it should have, because it also recognizes that not only is the 24th District different than the 7th District in Englewood or the 16th District out in Norwood Park in that area, but 2412 is different than 2411, and 2424 is different than 31. So CAPS recognizes that every beat is different and has to not only be patrolled differently, but needs different resources. And I think overall, citywide, people did a pretty good job of understanding that. And I think under this administration, under Mayor Emanuel's administration, you're going to see community policing strengthened. I know that, and just as a resident of the city and listening to the election rhetoric, if you will, from everybody, that was one of the platforms that he ran on, was strengthening community policing. What form that will take has yet to be seen. I mean, obviously there's a lot of priorities in a major city, but I have tremendous hope and faith in the new administration that we will see a resurgence in community policing.
I hope so, and that's one of the things I liked about him the best. Oh, and by the way, this is just coincidence that we're discussing it now, but for whatever reason, he's my latest Facebook friend.
Well,
I've actually never met the guy, to be honest.
yeah. Well,
I also haven't met most of my friends on Facebook. I've never met either.
No, and some of them are scary, so you probably don't want to.
Yeah, most of them are elected officials. It's very scary. So, how many people are in the police department right now?
I don't have an exact number at my level. We're not given that. I know, at one time we always had 13,500. That was kind of the standard line. I know because of retirements and things like that, and the slowdown in hiring, we're nowhere near that 13,500 mark. But you have to ask yourself, the city of Los Angeles has more people than we do, yet they only have somewhere between 7,800 police officers.
Really?
Yes. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Why are we have less population, yet we have 3,000 to 4,000 more police officers than they do? Well, one of the answers is because Los Angeles responds to only about 2 out of 10 calls to the police. In other words, the other 8 calls go to agencies that would handle those type of things. Where in Chicago, we still respond to about somewhere around 68% of calls to the police. In other words, almost 7 out of 10 calls we respond to, so we need more manpower to do that. We have been, over the years, using different strategies such as differential response. And basically that's what we call our callback unit. In other words, you get up in the morning, you look out in your backyard, and your bicycle is gone. Well, it could have been a $1,000 bicycle. You want to report it to your insurance company, you need a police report. Generally what you'll do is you pick up the phone, you'll call the 311 system, they'll put you through to our alternate response unit or callback unit, and you'll do the report right over the phone. In other words, you don't physically need to see the policeman to do that. The bike's gone, it's not coming back, the bad guy's not around the corner, it could happen at 2 in the morning. So you need that report for your insurance company. So in that sense, we don't have to send a police officer out. And we've been trying over the years to do that incrementally. We certainly don't want people to feel that the police won't respond, and we do respond to, I think, more than we probably should. I mean, we get some of the most, I mean, perhaps to the caller they're not ludicrous, but to us they are. I can't tell you how many times, and I listen to my radio in my car all the time, my police radio. We'll get a call, go over to, 2536 West Pratt. Mrs. Jones' 6-year-old refuses to go to school. and we kind of laugh about that, but we send the police to that. I mean, it gets to the point of ludicrous. Someone has a squirrel in their basement. I remember some years ago, I was watching a documentary about policing, and there was a very sharp New York police lieutenant on there. And he said, we're society's point men. And for anybody who doesn't know what a point man is, in the military, in Vietnam, and I'm assuming in Iraq and places like that, but I know in Vietnam, the point guy was the one that went out X number of clicks in front of the platoon, and it was his job to draw the fire or see what was going on. He was the point man. And the lieutenant's point was, after 5 o'clock, City Hall is closed. You are City Hall. You're the police department. The police department is the largest department in the city. So we take all that heat, we take all that steam for a lot of things that aren't really, someone has a hole in their street, they're calling the police, We go there, we call it on the radio, send streets of sand here, and we leave. But we still had to sign a policeman there, So, that's one of the things we're trying to do, is get those number of calls that we send police officers to, reduced. And in that sense, I personally don't really think you're ever going to see a 13,500 person police department again. Again, with reducing the number of calls that we have to go to, and with the economics right now, we just unfortunately can't afford it. I'm sure the mayor and the superintendent would love to hire 5,000 policemen. But it's just not practical right now. We just can't do it without raising taxes and pushing people out of the city.
Wow. Yeah, no, I hate to say it. It's not that long ago, but I really miss the good old days.
Well, I think we've been so focused on let's think out of the box that maybe we should be trying to think inside the box a little bit more. Maybe I'm an old timer and I think like that. Not everything we did in the old days was necessarily wrong or bad. We're in such a hurry to change everything. And believe me, I'm a big believer in change because change is inevitable. And number two, if you don't change rolls right over you. So, I believe we have to change, number one, because of the individuals coming on the police department today. The young kids who are coming on today, their goals, their wants, their needs, their background, their exposure to technology, their exposure to media are much, much different than my generation, most of whom came out of the military, came right on. I mean, I always say the big difference between the kid coming on today and when I came on the police department in 1972 is when they told us to jump, we said, how high? Today, when you tell young kids to jump on the police department, the first thing they ask is, well, why? And that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's a good thing. And I've always been a believer in every supervisor and command position I've been in is to give people the big picture. Let them see how they fit in to a plan, to whatever you're doing. But there are times that we have to say, we need you over here, and basically say, I'm the daddy and I'm telling you to stand over there. And that's why, and I'll explain it to you later, we don't have time for it now. And that's just, to me, leadership, making a decision, doing it, and that's it. We don't have to explain to you why we're doing it. But, trust me, we're doing it for a good purpose. So, like I say, with that being said, I see hopefully in the future that we will start hiring again. We will start getting more people on the police department again. We're getting a lot of veterans on the police department now from Iraq, Afghanistan. Yes. And because some of the requirements, I know they changed the requirements to take the exam. They changed the ages, but they were giving, military veterans preference. And I think that's terrific. I really do, I know when I came on the police department, I was one of only 5 college graduates in my class of 250. Wow. But again, that was 1972. Now most kids coming on, if they haven't finished college, they do on the police department because the city pays for their education. So I think we have the best educated police department now, and I think we have the most diverse police department now.
Well, there's no question the diversity, the department in the 24th district, even with less people, is as diverse as the community, which is as diverse as you could possibly get.
Yeah.
I mean, if you need an Indian, Pakistani, Jewish,
right,
anything.
Right. Well, we're just much more reflective of the communities that we serve now. Again, and I don't like to talk about the old days necessarily, but you have to, and to give today perspective. When I came on, it was like, mostly all white guys, some black guys, and there were more African Americans coming on in '72 than prior to that. A smattering of Latino guys, and a really small smattering of other nationalities, Today, I don't know, again, exactly the statistical breakdown of but it's almost like, it's a third Caucasians, it's a third African Americans and Latinos, it's a third women today. Women came into patrol in like 1974, 75, I believe, and that's not that long ago where we finally let women go out and ride in beat cars, We look at it from today's perspective and we say, well, that's crazy, but those were the times. So again, and the other thing is you have many more police officers living in the communities that they work in. Prior to that, most of the cities, north side guys lived out west and the northwest side. The south guys lived on the south and the southwest side around Midway Airport, Mount Greenwood, Beverly. Now you see, in Area 3 alone, especially down Wrigleyville and those places, tons of police officers living down there.
It's interesting because after our last community policing meeting, when I was standing outside talking to the officers afterwards, I think everyone but one lived in the 24th district. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, a couple actually lived in the beat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And you would never see that 25, 30, 35 years ago. So again, that part of the culture has changed significantly. And
that's also really good from the standpoint that they feel they have even I'm not saying that they weren't doing a bad job before by any means, but now they feel they have a vested interest in their own community. And that's
absolutely. And I never felt that way, that you had to live in a community to be able to provide really good quality police service to it. I think that's a misnomer. I think a good police officer is a good police officer no matter where you put him or her.
I agree.
But you're exactly right. I think when it's your community, there's just a little something extra there that you put into it.
In baseball, they would call it the 110% as opposed to the 100%.
Right, right.
We were talking before. You were going to explain about CompStat, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, CompStat. CompStat is a process really, and we just had a meeting with the superintendent actually yesterday. And he was explaining to us how the process works. I became a little bit familiar with it 15, 16 years ago when Tom Byrne was the commander here in 24. And I was
one of my favorite commanders.
Yes, Tom Byrne.
I consider him one of the big three. You're one of the big three, by the way.
Thank you, yeah. And, as you know, Tom is Commissioner of Streets and Sanitation now, but Tom was commander here and I was the community policing sergeant. We went to a community policing symposium which was held at the Hyatt Regency. And I actually believe I met McCarthy at the time down there, Superintendent McCarthy. I think he may have been a sergeant or lieutenant. But the guy who actually put together the CompStat was there. He's a very young deputy commissioner. And, at that time I could see this was kind of an adversarial process where their precinct commanders were held responsible, accountable, if you will, for crime in their precinct. And, if they didn't reduce crime or didn't reduce trends towards escalating crime, they were replaced. And it was as simple as that, When we started our accountability procedures here, there was a conscious effort on the part of the person that really put that together not to be adversarial about it. Our culture is a little bit different. But at yesterday's meeting, Superintendent McCarthy, very clearly explained the ComStat vision. And it's basically what it's doing is tasking commanders, district commanders in this sense, to know where their crime is, develop a plan to reduce their crime, monitor the plan, measure the plan, and see that it's successful or not. I mean, it's not brain surgery. And how's that done? It's very simple. You just have to be involved every day. You have to know, where your robberies are, because robberies are a tremendous indicator of violent crime in the district. Street robberies, obviously aggravated batteries or shootings, as we call them, and homicides. And as we all know, and I remember Superintendent Phil Klein would always say that, we could have 1,000 homicides, except for poor marksmanship and medical science,
I shouldn't laugh, but
it's true, and I think we've done a really great job over the last 6-7 years of reducing the number of homicides. And it's not all because of poor marksmanship. I think we did a good job of putting our cops on the dots where violence occurred, and I think our technology helped us a great deal there. Superintendent McCarthy wants to make the boots on the ground, the command staff, more accountable. And with that being said, we were talking a little bit off camera about the strategy that he just employed, which was taking 2 large units in our police department, the Mobile Strike Force, or MSF, and the Tactical Response Unit, or TRU, and basically suspending those unit activities, taking 400 of those officers, that's 400 police officers, putting them into the districts with the highest amount of violence, and then taking 100 officers and putting them in the deputy area chief's offices. I got 2 teams. I got 1 team from Mobile Strike Force, and we got 1 team from the TRU unit. That gives me 20 extra police officers, 2 sergeants, and a lieutenant, where I can take those people and deploy them in areas where we see spikes in violence. And most of these kids in these units, and of course everyone to me as a kid, are hard chargers. They're real go-getters. They've spent the last 2-3 years in high crime areas, predominantly on the south side and west side of the city. So for a lot of them, this is almost like a pleasant break. But as I reminded them their first night here, there's a lot of work to be done up in Area 3. So I was thrilled to get those 2 teams because they're really going to help us up here. Those commanders in the 8 districts that got those 400 people, they're getting 50, 60 people. That's going to help them tremendously. And as Superintendent McCarthy recognized, he said, I could not hold a district commander accountable if I didn't give him or her the resources. Well, now you have the resources. So again, the accountability part will come in these ComStat sessions where, you will give an overview of your district, of your crime, what your plan is, how you're monitoring your plan, what the results have been. It's like he said yesterday. He said, you may have had 3 homicides and 7 shootings last month or this month, but overall for the year, you're down 6 homicides and 20 shootings. So that's what we're looking at. You may have had a bad month, but overall you're down. So it's going to be very interesting. We don't know when the process is going to start. There's a lot of things to work out and everything like that. But it will start under him, and I would say within the next 2 months.
It sounds good, and we look forward. And Mr. Superintendent, you're more than invited to be on the show. In the meantime, we're out of time.
I have one more announcement to make.
Oh, please.
I'm leaving July 15th, Avi.
Wow.
So that's why I asked you when the show's going to be on. So it'll be about 2 weeks before I leave, but I'm retiring after almost 40 years on the police department.
Well, we want to wish you all the best,
Thank
and
you.
That's a major loss.
Well, I'll still be around.
Well, and by the way, you'll be invited on.
Thank you.
Early and often.
Thank you.
Wow, that's a big wow. I want to thank you so much. Deputy Chief Bruce Rottner, we're completely out of time. Thanks, Sonny. See ya. Bye.